Welcome to Sane-ish, the podcast for people healing from trauma, addiction, abuse, mental health struggles, grief, narcissists, and every other flavor of chaos life can throw at you, and somehow still functioning, mostly. I'm your host, Holley Broughton, survivor, truth teller, boundary setter, and proud member of the Still Healing, Still Hilarious Club. Around here, we don't do shame or embarrassment. We don't do perfection. Just real talk, dark humor, hard truths, and a whole lot of hope. Because sanity is overrated. And healing? That shit is messy. This is Sane-ish. Let's get into it. Disclaimer. On the Sane-ish podcast, we discuss personal stories of alcoholism, addiction, mental health, chronic illness, narcissistic abuse, domestic violence, SAE, parental alienation, grief, loss, homelessness, as well as many other forms of adversities in life. Our intention is to be inspirational, educational, identifiable, and resourceful. The views and experiences shared are in no way meant to praise or condone any illegal or harmful behavior. This content is for educational purposes only and not intended as professional advice. If you or someone you know is struggling with any of the above, we strongly suggest seeking help from a qualified professional, support service, or hotline related to your specific issue. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sane-ish podcast. Holley Broughton here, and I'm glad you joined us because today is a very special episode. I have my guest, Ann Wax, with me, and she's been a nurse for 50 years, which is incredible in itself. She is also a oncology doula, which is a specialty. Her mother passed away with cancer. Her sister passed away with ovarian cancer. So she's very familiar with the C word. So she's very familiar with that part of nursing. And so she's going to talk about her life and then her experience in nursing. And then we'll kind of get into questions having to do with that. And this is kind of a special episode for me because it kind of helps me and a personal friend of mine. So anyway, Ann, welcome to the show. Welcome to Sane-ish. Glad to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. I always appreciate when people invite me to talk.
Yeah.
Because I'm the youngest of 5 and I was never invited to talk or give my opinion. So I truly appreciate that you give me the opportunity. So you wanted me to give you a brief history of my life or my experiences. So obviously, for all those out there, I have a very extinct accent, which shows that I'm a native New Yorker. I was born in Brooklyn, but never lived there. But apparently I have this Brooklyn accent that follows me around wherever I go. I just came back from France. And of course, as soon as I opened up my mouth, there was my accent. So anyway, so then I grew up and my mother was a nurse and I saw what she went through. And she was also a health educator, a teacher, and a giver. She was always taking care of people, giving. And honestly, I never wanted to do that. I thought it was too much hard work. And I was not one for doing hard work. But somehow my father had this revelation, an insight, feeling like I should be a nurse. And the next thing I know, I was all set to go to one college. And then then all of a sudden I was going to a different college. And before I know it, I was in nursing and doing nursing, learning how to be a nurse and not regretting one moment of it. I was very thankful that my father saw that it was a very good vocation for me. And it gave me independence. It gave me respect. And I always say everybody should have 2 degrees, one in nursing, because the healthcare field, and the other in being the law degree, because you know how the law operates. And with that, you can take it anywhere. I never followed through with a law degree, but I did marry a lawyer. So that's my backup.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
So, you've been in nursing for 50 years.
Yes.
So
Keep repeating that. I
I know.
can't believe it myself.
I'm sorry, but it's so remarkable. I mean, that's amazing, and it's something that I think you should be. I mean,
No, I am proud of it.
yes, very should
And
be very proud of it.
I saw the different stages of how nursing progressed, as I also saw the different stages how oncology progressed, because part of my nursing career, a great big part of it was oncology nursing, where I took care of people, I lectured on it, and I also offer my opinions about many times to patients of what they should and shouldn't eat, which didn't help. I got into trouble doing that a lot of times. But that's a
Mm.
whole nother story. So the point of it all, yes, I'm very proud of it because it gave me something that was very fulfilling, and I felt I had a purpose, which I feel everybody needs to have a purpose in life.
Yeah, and so getting to your role as an oncology doula, do you want to explain to everyone what a doula is, what an oncology doula is?
So a doula is a word that's being used a great deal now. One is a birthing doula, where they hire people to come and to sit women who are giving birth to. It's basically the old time where you had women around you helping you give birth. They teach you how to breathe, to squat, and so the labor would be easier. They have an end of life doula also, which also helps the patient to transition into end of life and working with their families. What I
Mhm.
saw, there was a need for an oncology doula because there's nothing out there that I have seen where you can have care between the care. You have nurse navigators that the hospital uses, and they navigate your appointments, they navigate your doctors, they navigate the scans and all the variables that go into treatment, but they don't help deal with guidance in the sense where working with the families. When you get diagnosed with cancer, the family is involved. Even if you don't talk to them, you end up talking to them. The family is always involved. And it's very scary because you have things that are coming at you all sides. Often I live here in New York City. So what would happen is, and I did not work for Sloan Kettering, but I worked for very good doctors. But if they went to my doctors, you would have a family member most likely would say to them, well, why don't you go to Sloan Kettering? You should go to Sloan Kettering and, seek that care out because, that's the name brand in New York City. So you have to learn how to seek out information, variables, and also give emotional support. I don't prescribe any medications. And
Mhm.
I don't, once you make that decision of how you want to be treated or where you want to go or not be treated at all, that's up to you because I don't have the right or the wrong answer, so to speak. It's up to the person to decide because it's
Mhm.
not my life. And, I always tell people the second part to this is once you decide on a specific modality, a specific treatment, you stay with it. You don't second guess and say, should I, could I, would I? Because
Mhm.
what I've seen is that we know, but we don't know.
Mhm.
I've seen miracles in this field, and I've seen sometimes where the drugs did not work. But
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that you didn't heal. The focus for me is, and I keep emphasizing is, it's the word healing. We have to heal within, and we have to heal emotionally and physically. And the issue is that when we get cancer, it's like a sewage is inside us, so to speak, and the
Mhm.
sewage of our emotional wounds from childhood, from society, comes seeping up and out. And you have to deal with that also, as well as the physical. So as a doula, I help and I walk you through it. It's more of an emotional support.
Okay.
All right.
Do you, and this is just a question that came up while you were talking. Do you find that when people, now I'm not judging or anything by any means, but because I know I can't even imagine being diagnosed.
Well, it's not you see, it's not a question that you're judging. It's a topic which is a very sensitive topic.
Right,
And
right,
that's what this is because you don't know what to say. Even
right.
I've been in this business for 50 years and I talk a lot and sometimes I too am speechless. I don't know what to say because
Yeah,
sometimes
sure.
you just don't have words.
Right. So I guess what I was going to ask is, do you see a difference when when they are diagnosed and they decide what treatment they're going to take, and then you're involved, but the ones that have a more positive attitude
Okay.
about it?
So so positive to me is like a buzzword, so to speak, because everybody to me, especially those who are diagnosed with cancer and show up for surgery, for radiation, for any
Uh-huh.
form of chemotherapy, has a positive attitude because
Yeah.
it's a challenge.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
So
That's why I
so
said
it's a challenge.
yeah.
And, I find when I offer support, it does help. It's an emotional support because you want somebody, in your back pocket when you don't feel good. You may feel nauseous or lethargic, and you want somebody to say, well, what's the next treatment? Or do you need some hydration? Or even, if you want to get nitty gritty, constipation. A lot of times chemotherapy can cause constipation, which many times does not have to be. I'm not saying all the time, but if you get on a specific regimen and the doctors are, on top of everything and the nurse practitioners, you will see that you have an easy time of it. But positive attitude, anybody that walks through that door has a positive attitude and
Yeah.
courage too.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mean to come off offensive.
No, 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 it's not offensive. It's just I'm very outspoken, and fortunately, I don't have a good filter. So when a patient sits down and they're all pumped up and they say, "Okay, give me my poison," which is chemotherapy. So of course, there's a whole lecture on that.
Right, right, right,
I say to them, because nobody wants to have poison in the body. And secondly, they say, "I have a positive attitude. Everybody tells me to be positive." And I said, "That's wonderful, but positive and healing are two separate things." I say to them, "You're here, you showed up. That's positive. Now let's focus on healing."
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I know some people, uh, and I'm speaking for myself. I would probably not take that very well. Like if I was diagnosed, I don't know if I would take that very
Well,
well.
let me say something to you. Nurses, or I should speak for me personally, are cowards. I'm a coward. So I always find it such courage when I see patients coming in, extending their arms so I can start an IV and talk to me and let me administer these chemotherapies that the next day may not make you feel so good. I admire them. So it's,
That's what I'm saying.
yes, going through this and understand that I always tell my patients, you have choices. And they say to me, well, do we really have a choice? And you do have a choice. I've had patients that walked away and refused chemotherapy. I had
Yeah,
that, but
sure.
it's a hard call. So I respect my patients. Anyone that sits down, even, some patients that are a little bit angry and don't like my style, I still respect them because it is a very difficult challenge that one
Yeah,
faces.
yeah. And that's why I said I'm not sure if I would
That's
have a
right.
positive attitude myself. So um, I don't know.
Yeah.
So yes, I respect anyone that goes through that. I've had friends go through it,
Yeah.
so I get it. But going back to your experience with your family, how did those two experiences affect you, and how did you get through those two experiences? How were you able to work through those experiences?
So we'll start with my mom because she
Oh,
was the first one. She had melanoma of the eye. And it was very disheartening because my mother was a vibrant person and she had to have her eye removed. And I was busy with my own family with the kids. So my sister, who's like the matriarch of the family, she went with my mom, and my mom had her surgery done in Philadelphia. And the
mm,
irony with that is too, I want to emphasize. So when my mother first having some effects of it, she knew she was a nurse. I have to say that. So she
right.
knew something was wrong. So she went to one of the best doctors supposedly in New York City. Now this is close to 30 years ago. And again, she was a nurse, so sometimes doctors think that, nurses know it all. And she also was a woman, so they think she might be exaggerating.
Mm,
So it took her a couple months to get the proper diagnosis, not from the doctor who she saw in New York City. She actually investigated and went down to Philadelphia, and that's where she found her doctor, and she did the surgery, and she had no chemo because at that time there was nothing done. And she was pretty dynamic. She went all over the world. Nobody knew that she only had one eye. She drove, which my siblings and I used to pray every time because they would put mirrors on the car, and she would drive a stick shift with her dog in the car, and that was pretty scary. And she
Oh.
never missed the beat. But then what happened was, about 10 years later, the cancer metastasized to her lungs. And that's when she went into the decline. And that's when there was no treatment. She went for clinical studies, and she knew that the clinical study was not going to benefit her, but she was a giver. So she felt that even though it may not help me, may help someone else. And it was right when they were starting to use the thought process of antibodies and understanding the immune system. So she didn't benefit from that. And then we had to decide what to do. So we placed, or not we, she actually decided because again, we told her, and I say this, it's her life. She has to decide. It's
Hmm.
not me. So she went on hospice, and she knew she was dying. And the care that she got from hospice, I went to all the nurses, and I thought they were just remarkable. They were giving, and people would stop in and talk to her, and you know they sh she knew she was dying, and it was such dignity. And the doctor, when my mom died, she called me and she spoke to me. So it was very hard, but it was my mother, and y- I was a child. I knew eventually it was going to happen. So it was hard, but with my sister, it was a different story because my sister had ovarian cancer.
Hmm.
I'm laughing because she was dynamic too. I don't know where I come from because I'm not dynamic, but my sister was dynamic. She another one. She drove all over the place. I used to go with her and we always got lost in the car, but she found her way without GPS. She was a dancer. She was a gym teacher, a health teacher. She did everything. What happened with her was she got diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And that was very difficult because no one expected it. And again, with her with ovarian cancer, many times she was an athlete too. So she thought she was just gaining weight. So she would do sit ups or exercise, thinking that her belly would go down. And
Mm.
again, she went and I just thought about this. She went to a doctor. And again, the doctor looked at her and said, not, no, no, nothing's wrong. And then my older sister got involved and went to another doctor, and that's where we found out she had ovarian cancer. And that was
Oh.
devastating because I wrote it. I have a book I wrote, and it speaks about how I just couldn't believe it because again, she was so dynamic
Mhm.
but even while she lived with this for about 5 years, a little bit more. She did everything. She danced, she did ballet, she did everything. She would put her wig on and walk around with this wig. And one time she was on a cruise and she was getting ready and she was ironing, and she burnt her wig, so she cut half of it off and she put it on. She was quite a dynamic person, and both my mother and her had the will to not live in a sense that yes, I have cancer, but it's not going to stop me from living. And
Right.
that's where I've learned a lot that it should not take that away from you. You still have a choice to thrive, and that's what both of them did. They were thrivers in the sense of doing what they did, and showed everyone that's how to live, and graciously too.
Yeah. So that's kind of what my next question is. So after 50 years of nursing, what do you believe people get wrong about life?
It's funny. I knew you were going to ask me that question, and I don't think people get life wrong. I think that, as a mother, you give birth and you have
Mhm.
this child here, and you have all the hopes and dreams and all this other stuff, and then they don't turn out the way you want them to. Really,
Right.
as much as
Yeah.
they're wonderful and get to, I'm gonna sound very harsh now. So now I'm at the grandmother stage, and I don't walk around even with a cell phone with the pictures of my grandkids. But everybody pulls out pictures of their grandkids. They say, "Do you want to see them?" I go, "No," because I know they're wonderful and beautiful and this and that. So the point of the story is it's not what you get wrong about it. It's how you live. We are all brought up in different ways, and we all have different lenses. Some people are brought up with stricter parents. Some people are brought up with parents that aren't. Some people are religious. Some people are spiritual. We have so many different variables going on. So the
Right.
point of the story is that what I see is to be grateful. Like today in New York City, it was a beautiful day. The sun was shining. I was able to get up, walk, went to the beach, and to me, that's grateful. Gratitude is something that's very simple, doesn't cost anything, and that's what I feel. But if some people get that wrong, that's okay, because if that's what makes them feel good, sometimes people don't want to feel grateful and they're angry and they're upset, and that's all right too. It's whatever makes you feel, good inside yourself. Because some people, we're all different, and that's what makes, the universe go around, so to speak.
Right. So, what has working with so many patients over
50
this amount of
years.
time, what has that taught you that a textbook hasn't taught you?
It's so much. Well, I was always raised to be an outspoken person, but since I've worked with oncology, with cancer patients, I have learned that it doesn't matter. If you have something to say it. I say this all the time to people, you want to be polite, you don't want to hurt people's feelings, you tiptoe around. Just come out and say it. Be honest, be authentic. I also learned gratitude. I've seen patients you give them a cup of water, and it sounds simple, but they're thankful for it. It's just the way how you look at things. You can look at things and say, things are pretty blah, 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 blah. Or you can look in and say, I'm here today and things are really good. It's not Pollyanna. It's a way of living. And it also helps you with the immune system, because when you walk around depressed and upset, it doesn't help the immune system. But when you feel good, you secrete serotonin. And you always know when my patients were, because they were always, I say to them, even the patients that were a little bit, a little angry, I said, put a smile on your face, but you have to show your teeth, because when you show your teeth, you release serotonin. You got the cheeks have to, and I said,
Right.
and you release it. And then they would say, oh, here she goes again. But they did, and they feel better because, who's to say what? Nobody really knows what goes around, so to speak. But if
Mhm.
you can feel good and understand that, it's not so bad after all, that's a plus for me.
Yeah. So when you are, I guess as a doula, you're kind of the liaison between the patient and the family,
The patient,
right?
the family, the physicians,
Doctor.
the
Yeah.
doctors, an emotional support, like I would call and I'd say, come, let's go for a walk today. Or would you like to do some deep breathing exercises? Or would you like some meditation? That type of variables. Or just I can say to the family, not now. Maybe, they have to rest or something like that.
Yeah. So what kind of like emotional dynamics do you see within that process?
With the
Like
family, or with the family,
with the patient and the family that you feel like, I mean, is it like is it sometimes a roller coaster
yes,
when
sometimes yes,
okay.
sometimes it's a roller coaster, because what happens is I'm keeping things very simplistic. So a
Sure.
patient, and it's so a patient comes in and, you're getting chemotherapy, radiation, you're getting these different modalities, and you're tired and you just don't wanna eat.
Mhm.
So what does the family do? The family feels, because this is out of love most of the time.
Right. Sure.
So they come in with this big gigantic hamburger with French fries and pickles or coleslaw and all this stuff on it and ketchup, and they say, "Here," to the patient. Now, I don't think you would eat that even if you wanted to eat that in a chemotherapy room. And they go, "Here, eat it." And you look at them and they're looking at this person, in the chair getting chemotherapy, eat, and all they wanna do is just crawl underneath the chair.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so what happens is that so they take a bite, maybe 2, put it aside very diplomatically because, again, they don't wanna challenge the person that brought in this gigantic sandwich, a hamburger, but at the same time, it makes the patient feel uncomfortable because they can't say to this person that came in with this stuff or challenge them because they don't wanna upset them.
Right.
And I tell the patients over and over again, stop worrying about upsetting other people. You're facing the challenges in your life. This is not a walk in the park or with a dog or whatever it is. This is a challenge and it's very scary. And if you have something to say, then say it. It doesn't matter, even if it comes out wrong. I had patients that would apologize to me because, they said stuff to me. What I said, there's no apologies needed. I'm not sitting in that chair. I'm not getting what you're getting. And whatever you have to say, if you feel, that you want to say something, that's fine. There's no judgment here because it is, I call it the twilight zone. Cancer to me is the twilight zone. It's the before has changed and you're in this twilight zone and then after is going to be changed. Your life is going to be totally different after. And so here you are. So say what you have to say and no apologies. And people are kind. It's not like a patient's going to lash out and call you an idiot or this or that. They're
Right.
still trying to be very diplomatic because people, people are nice. But at the same time, there's an understanding here, and I say to them because they're more upset. It's like I had a patient, they come in and here they are again getting the chemo. Okay, let's do the sandwich again. And then the husband is sitting there, and he's upset because the IV wasn't started on time and they have to go home at a certain time and they have to feed the dog and da 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 da. And he's listing all these complaints. And this poor soul is sitting there worrying about him because he has to do all these things. Meanwhile,
Mm.
she is the patient.
Mhm.
Instead of saying, don't come with me the next time,
Right.
but if she says that, he'll get insulted.
Right.
I
So
tell I tell patients, and I remember she was an 80-year-old woman once, and she said to me, "Ann, I'm a grown up." I tell patients, it's time to be an adult, time to grow up and tell people your needs and stop worrying about offending them. You're not this child anymore, and you don't have to please.
yeah. So how often do you have patients who go into remission and then you see them again if they come out of remission? Do you ever have that? Have you ever had that
I've
before?
seen remission is a very interesting word also because when I first started, that was the goal to get everybody in remission. I remember 50 years is a long time, get into remission. But what happens is now we have patients that have been walking around. There's a woman called Chris Carr, and she was diagnosed with cancer 20 years ago. I forget what stage she was. I've heard her speak. Point is, she's never in remission, but she's vibrant, she's active, she does all these things, she lectures, she talks. So remission is an interesting word because the goal was to, get someone in remission, and
Mhm.
perhaps there are, but you always have that backstory in your head. Well, what happens? Does it come back? And
Right.
often cancer does come back because they still haven't gotten the hold on it. Some people say it's like the weed theory, where you go in and you get rid of all the weeds, but there's always that one weed. So with cancer, it's like they go in and they eradicate all the cells, but then there's that one cell that may pop up somewhere else. And that's
Mhm.
why they do the immunotherapy now. They're trying to get rid of the cells, and even chemotherapy too is like it's a systemic thing. They go throughout the body with chemotherapy to eradicate all these cells that are not supposed to be there.
Mhm. So you haven't seen any.
I've seen remission, but I find it's a very interesting word. This is what I'm saying. I've seen people, the cancer never came back. They live, for a very long time. And yeah, maybe that's remission. But nowadays, as we see the population, more and more people are living with different stages of cancer. That's what I'm
Okay,
trying
I
to
see what
say.
you're
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. So, what are some of the most beautiful family moments that you've witnessed being kind of the liaison? in between families
Well,
that you remember?
so I'll say one personally because
Sure.
I find this more interesting in the sense because I come from I shouldn't say it, but a dysfunctional family, and I'm the youngest of 5. So
Mhm.
my parents used to fight all the time, and they finally got divorced after 30 years. And then we told my father knew about my mother, and they were friends. They were friends over the years. And then she got lung cancer, and she was in the hospice in the facility, and my father says, "Ann, I wanna go see your mom," and my siblings go, "No, no, don't take him." I said, "How can you not, take him?" I said, "I also find when you have a marriage, it's the same thing, like, I don't dictate, marriage is a very interesting, of a relationship. You really, because you don't know really what goes behind closed doors, and you
Right.
don't really know, every marriage is different, and
Right.
my parents, I always knew they loved each other, but they fought like cats and dogs. I don't know if that
Right.
makes sense. So, my siblings say, "No, you're gonna upset mom, don't do it." And I said, "You know what? If my father asks me to visit with her, then I'm going to do it. It's not up to me." So
Right.
I brought him in and he saw my mother sitting there and they both started crying. And they were crying and crying and crying, because he was upset with her and she didn't want him to see her and on and on and on. But then afterwards, then they started fighting again. And I knew that was going to happen. But, it was their last goodbye. After you have 5 children, you have a relationship. It's not like,
It's
so, and I know this was, old home week again. So then that was it. And my mother never said to me afterwards, "Why'd you bring him?" or anything like that because they both loved each other
yeah.
in their own
That was just
way.
kind of the way they loved each other.
Yeah. I couldn't
They
believe
just
it. I was an adult and watching this, here I am and they're fighting afterwards.
they just sealed it that way.
That's right. They cried and then they fought again.
I'm trying to remember that story that would and Anne and I had a pre-podcast conversation, and I'm trying to remember that story that you told them. It'll come to me. Oh, let me I'll
Well, I'm
think
glad
about
you
it.
made you laugh. Humor is very important. Also
Yes, it
for
is.
healing. Yeah.
I'm all about the humor.
Mhm.
I'm all about the humor. And I can't remember the story that you mentioned, and I told you, I said, you're gonna have to tell that on the podcast, and now I can't remember what it was, but
Remember
anyway,
what it was about at all? I don't.
I can't remember. And, of course, now that I told you you're gonna have to remember that on the podcast, now, of course, I forgot.
You didn't write it down.
So, have you ever experienced anything that strengthened or challenged or changed any of your spiritual beliefs while you were
Well,
if
how
you have
so
any or
so what happens is I've always been different. Again, my parents were very spiritual people. My mother was always very spiritual. And so I always sense energy. I always feel there's a form of energy around us. And, it's true. Even when they say when the person dies, the energy, still there. I believe Einstein said that. So the point of this story is, so I was around when my father-in-law was dying, I was in the room with him
Mhm,
and he trusted me. I would help, I would talk to him, and I used to go through the days of the week with him. And he was a spiritual and a religious man. So the
mhm.
point of it is that I felt a presence. Now, I don't know if someone else did, but I felt the presence. And when I we spent he died over a weekend, and I said to him as I was leaving to go home, because I had kids at home, I said to him, his name was Herbie, I said, "Herbie, I'm going now. It's Sunday, and you can go." And, I went home with my husband, and then I got the phone call, and the medical assistant, the assistant walked in and he was dead. So the point of the story is, now, did he do that because of me? Was he going to die at that moment?
Mm.
I don't know. But I do know when I went into the kitchen after, when I came back and I turned on the electricity, all the lights popped. And
Oh,
some people say that's how the energy goes too. Now, I'm not a scientist. And I'm not saying this to make people feel good, but I also saw when my mother was dying, and now this is getting a little bit more, but I tell people that sometimes they reach out and they start talking. And my mother was in the last days when I was with her, she was reaching out and it looked like she was talking to somebody.
Mhm.
Again, I don't know, but I tell people, you know, just silence a little bit and you may feel the energy in the room. Because I do believe that we're all connected. Like I'm connected to you. We have an energy right now, you and I going with this podcast.
Mhm.
And people don't understand that. So I was with my sister when she passed. So, I'm just nobody's gonna invite me to their house anymore.
You never know.
There
You
she
may get
comes
more.
in.
You may get more.
I know, here she comes in, but, you don't know, and that's why I tell people I also find I was young at the time with my grandmother was 90 years old, she had breast cancer twice, all right, and she died when she was 90 years old. Now think about that, with no chemotherapy, and this happened 50 years ago. So, point of the story is she I think she had pneumonia, she got 90 years old, and she was in the hospital, and she coded and, they could have let her go, but she was revived. And I said, joking around, I said she had to wait for her favorite grandson to come. And he showed up and then she passed. So what
Wow.
I'm saying is, do I know? And, usually people say, I tell people that usually they pass around a birthday, around an anniversary, something that's significant to them. Now, with my family, there was nothing outstanding at all. At least I didn't see it. But then again, I don't know signs,
Yeah.
and there are signals of communication maybe. So I don't know. But all I know is that dying is part of life and
Mhm.
it's important to have a good death also, and that's what I also try to tell people. Sometimes, like, they intubate the patients and they do the codes and things like that, and they know that the family, says, "Yes, we have to do all we can." And that's admirable, but at times, did they do this type of saving 100, 200 years ago? People
Right.
I felt died more peacefully and with dignity.
Right. Right. Well, what do you find? Do you find that when you work with the families that they kind of feel like they're short, like they're losing time and they are losing conversation with their loved one?
So again,
Does
I
that
don't
make sense?
yeah,
Does that question
I
make
know
sense?
what you're saying. I am not a end of life doula, but obviously from my stories, I've been around. And what I say to patients and I say to the family members, because it's not just, I've been around people who are dying from heart disease and, all this other stuff. People supposedly you still hear, and you hear the words. And I tell people or patients or whoever wants to listen to me, go over and talk to them and say things to them, if you want. A lot of times they say, they can't hear me, or they don't hear you. You don't know, but I do. I truly believe, even when I was taking care of patients, like in the hospital on a clinical floor, I was always talking. Maybe that I just laughed. They couldn't answer me back, but I was always talking to them. I was like,
Yeah.
but I knew they had a sense of feeling because human connection and human touch is something that no one can take away. And when you reach out your hand and go into somebody's energy space, even you can feel it if you're more open to it. Like I tell a lot of times, if you rub your hands and hold them out, you can feel the energy. As I said, I was in France. I was supposed to do a lecture, but that's another story. But we went to, I can't pronounce now, the cathedral. Anyway, in France, they had they're famous for the most famous stained glass windows in France, this cathedral. And it happened to be a Friday, and they had the labyrinth. You know what a labyrinth is? Okay. And it's in the middle of this gigantic cathedral. And supposedly the pilgrims 1,000 years ago would walk among this labyrinth and meditate. So, here I am. And I was with a tour guide. She says, "Would you mind if I do it?" Referring to, I said, "Of course, yeah, we'll all go." She says, "But Ann, you can't talk." See, that was difficult for me. I couldn't talk. But she was shushing me because I was going, "Do you feel?" But the thing was, I felt the energy from it. I went around this labyrinth and people meditated and you could feel the energy. And there were some people that had their hands extended and they did meditate and they did say prayer. So what I'm saying to this audience of yours is that we all have anxiety. We all have despair. But if we just, I always say, take a breath and understand that you're worthy, that you're loved, and that there's a connection. There's this human connection that we all have, and that's a wonderful thing. Mhm.
And so how would you what would you tell someone who has lost a loved one who has been married to a person for more than like half of their life?
Okay, so I was gonna make a but, so I'll tell you a story first, and then I'll
Sure.
tell you my answer. So I
Sure.
had a very good friend, and she lost her husband. He had a major heart attack right in front of her house, and she was
Mm.
crying and crying and crying. And she says to me, "Well," she says, Aunt, I don't know what I'm going to do. I had coffee with him, and we ate breakfast together, and we did this together and that together, and on and on and on. And she was married a long time, and I'm sitting there like, really? She was upset. And I'm looking at her, "Oh, I never ate breakfast with my husband, and blah, blah, blah." And now he's retired, and I don't know what to do, and I'm going and I said, "Okay," but what I'm saying, I mean, everybody has a different type of marriage, obviously, but what I'm
Right.
saying to it is grief.
Mhm.
And to tell people to get over grief, we have it. That's part of us, our humanity, and it's
Mhm.
sad. And to say, "Oh, get over it, and you'll be fine in 2 months, a month." Sometimes people never get over grief, but
Right.
that's okay. As I said, I'm not. When I say okay, I shouldn't. It's not up to me to give permission.
Yeah.
I'm not a. But what I'm saying, it's okay in the sense that this is the one you loved, and it's sad that that person's missing. But, I'm talking to all them. I sound now I'm gonna sound really, but I talk to everybody. I talk to my mom, I talk to my sister Lois, I talk to, all these people that have passed because who's to say they're not with you? Just
Oh, I
because.
believe it.
Okay,
I
alright,
believe you. I know my dad's with me
okay.
all the time.
But because
So
you feel the energy. But at the
yeah.
same time, it's sad, and you're never gonna replace that person, and
Mm.
even if you fall madly in love with someone else, you're still never gonna replace it because you have a history, and once you
Mhm.
have a history with a person, that's part of you. Good or bad, that's part of you.
Mhm.
So, my feeling is, yeah, but don't stop living because in honor of that person doesn't want you to sit there and not live.
Right.
That person, I'm sure, I mean, I don't know who I'm speaking about, but the point of it is in honor of the person who you lost, then honor that soul and have a purpose. If you want to take care of dogs, go dog walking or take care of people or whatever you find that it's something of worth, or even just sitting in the sun and just saying, "I feel you." That's important because
Mhm.
there is energy there.
Right. And it honestly, if you or for me, I can only speak for myself, but if I've noticed that if I'm more aware, I see little signs. Like just if my eyes are open and I'll be like, "Oh, that's my dad." Like or
I don't
or
yeah, I don't maybe I'm so busy talking that I don't see the signs. Maybe that's part of it. I don't see signs. People like you say, that's very fortunate that you do. I don't. But I do feel like a guidance,
Mhm.
and I think that's different. But I would like to see a sign one day, or that would be helpful.
Well, I mean, it's not all the time,
No,
but
no, no, I know what you're saying.
I have to be aware.
Yeah. Well, it's a
Eh,
signal.
yes. Yeah.
There's a signal that goes on, and, sometimes they say when the light flickers, Sometimes they say when the
Right.
song goes on, computers are supposed to be, my daughter was very fond of my brother and he passed and he was a computer person. And she says, "Oh, Uncle Neil is talking to me." So what I'm saying to you is that we don't know until we pass and figure out
Right.
what's going on in the other world. But
Right.
energy is energy. And, who's to say that we don't feel it? Who's to say that we don't see the signs? Nobody can say that to us because there's no proof whether it is or it isn't. It's up to us. And if that makes us feel good, that's great.
Right. That's right. Well, Anne, do you want to share with us your book? Or you
So
want to
I
go ahead?
appreciate that. So I
Yeah.
wrote a book. Let me see if I can hold it up. Okay, it's called Op-Ed on Cancer. I appreciate it. You can get it on Amazon. I'd never like self-help books because again, with the positive attitude and be nice to everybody, that didn't fit my style, unfortunately, I guess. So I decided that I'll do one on my own terms. And a patient called me an op-ed editorial once. He says, "I'm like an op-ed page. I have an opinion on everything." And I said, "Okay, because that's what it is. This is my opinion." And it's about facing the challenges of cancer. It talks about legacy, about what is your legacy. My mom was afraid that nobody would remember her. All I remember when she was dying, who's going to remember me? Fast forward, my daughter became a fundraiser for NYU and for the hospital, and they had some conference, several conferences, and the first picture she put up was my mother as a nurse in her nursing thing, and she says, "Would Grandma be proud?" I said, "Yes, because you remembered her," and I think that's the most fear of dying. Who is going to remember me? So I say
Mm.
to people, "What's your legacy? What do you do? What's your purpose?" It's one thing if you don't like somebody, but if you have an argument or whatever it may be, and it bothers you, reach out because it may not be a next time where you can. Or if you want to do, like be philanthropic, give that dollar to somebody who's on the street, who needs a hand. There's so many things. What is your legacy? Because, when you pass and they do that, what is it? The speech, the sermon, you know,
Yeah, the eulogy.
yeah, the eulogy, I know what mine's gonna be, but always getting into trouble, talking too much. But what I'm saying to you is, but what is your eulogy going to be? And you don't have to be a saint, you don't have to be this wonderful, person, but understand that you're part of humanity, and what will your legacy be, and what's your purpose?
Yeah, that's awesome. And so where can people get your book?
Amazon,
All
Amazon,
right.
of course, and I'm writing
Oh,
another book. I'm busy working on that now, so
nice.
hope to be on your podcast again.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Thank you.
Anytime. And so Anne also writes, I should have mentioned this earlier, but she also has done education and resources. She's also been responsible for that stuff too. So
I've done a
she's
lot of things in my 50 years of nursing, but
yeah,
that's
she's
but that's the beauty of nursing. Nursing allows you to do many, many different types of work where you would not be able to do that if you had another position.
yeah.
It's a wonderful occupation.
I'm going to put all of that, like where to get your book
Thank you.
and all of that information in the episode description so everybody can know where to look for it.
I
So,
appreciate it. Thank you.
absolutely. And then you'll have to let me know where, when your next one comes out. So
100%. I'm working on
get
it now.
get to work, lady.
I know. 100%.
Well, thank you so much, Anne, for being on here and sharing your experience because that's something to be very proud of. And I'm very grateful that you, especially in the line of work that you do.
And one more thing, Holly, if people who want to speak with me, they can always email me. It's annwax7@gmail.com. I'll be very happy to speak with them. And then also I'm on LinkedIn also as well, Ann Wax. So, if you want to contact me and speak with me, again, I'm here.
Thank you so much. I'll put that on there too.
Okay.
So, But I'm so grateful that you're willing to come on the podcast, and you've been very gracious. And so thank you for sharing your perspective and just being open about cancer and your experience as an oncology doula. And it's incredible. So very grateful to have you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
All
thank
right.
you very much.
And thank you for the audience that's going to be listening to this.
Of course. They'll be excited, I know. So anyway, well, thank you so much. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. And we will see you on the next episode. So stay tuned.
Good night.
Good night.